Rehabilitation Research and Training Center on Independent Living Management presents Pioneers in Disability Rights and Community Organizing. An interview with Kathleen Kleinmann.
Hi, I'm June Kales here with Doug Uziak, and we're speaking with Kathleen Kleinmann. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kathleen, how did you find yourself getting involved in community organizing, and what type of community organizing are you doing now?
Right now, I'm very active with ADAPT. I'm very active with the politics of independent living, such as NICL, such as relating to other independent living centers through our state associations, through coming to conference where I know there will be. And that's really what I'm involved with right now. Also through DimeNet, which I think is an information exchange medium, and something that is consumer controlled, where we can put up anything we want, whether it's something we agree with, something we don't agree with, and there it sits for the whole world to see. So I'm real committed to the information sharing. I love debate. I love people who disagree with me, and I love to engage in those conversations where I'm going to learn something. And that's what I'm involved in. That's the organizing I'm involved in.
How'd you find yourself into this? I mean, what led you down the path to get into this type of activity?
Well, working in an independent living center in the 80s, I worked hard. I felt, looking back at the end of my tenure with the center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that despite all my hard work, I hadn't accomplished much. I was real disappointed with my own results. I had the opportunity in 1989 to come to a little satellite independent living center in Washington, Pennsylvania, that nobody was really interested in, had been existing and doing nothing. The phones weren't even ringing for approximately 2-3 years. It was, nothing was happening. It was dead. I had the opportunity, to take that and make it into a new independent living center all by myself, where nobody was interested in this little piece. And I said, wow, what an opportunity to do something. I did not feel like I knew what to do. I did not feel like I had the answers. I was just willing to try, willing to ask questions, willing to make mistakes. I think I learned most of what I know by making a mistake, not by doing it right, and just kind of whittling away at what's not the right way to do it, and finally coming into a conclusion of what's a better way to do it. Not necessarily what the right way is, but what was better than what I used to do. And I constantly am revising and looking for somebody to give me help with an idea, with a process, with a new project. And what I found is it's not necessarily the independent living centers who have all the answers. It's the people who are coming to the centers. It's the visitors, the consumers, the community members who are banging up against walls. They have more ideas, and trying to find a way to take what they're telling me and crystallizing it all down into something that's going to work. That's really been the biggest place where I've found a lot of my information.
Talk about, over these years, your experience in organizing.
I was new to organizing. I was an admirer of people who organized. I wanted to make a difference. I learned about the power of anger. I learned that by being exposed by people over in ADAPT. And I learned that most people who experience anger or frustration over something that's not going well are being told, that stifle that anger. That it's not helpful. It's bad. You have to get along. You have to get along, go along. And I felt that I was observing people being oppressed by that. The organizing I try to do is find people who are angry and give them permission to be angry. Say, I don't blame you for being angry. That's wrong. You're right, you should fight against that. So I find the permission is the organizing that I do, because a lot of things will take care of themselves. If you're telling people what they need to hear, you'll find, 100 people telling them to be nice, to get along. If they find one person telling them it's okay, it's good to express that anger, it's okay to do something in an angry manner, if they'll listen to that one person and discount those 99 if they're really angry, and giving them the support they need in terms of maybe access to postage, access to a photocopier, access to other people who think like they are thinking, that kind of support goes a long way for getting them to take it to the next level. And so the combination of support and permission starts the organizing process all by itself. And then you start connecting people up who've had similar experiences, whether that be, I'm really very angry I can't get transportation in my rural community, or I'm really angry that my landlord won't put a ramp in. Put them in touch with other people who are angry, and the organizing begins. And then you can seed it with ideas. You can do this, you can go to the Housing Authority, you can go to the HUD, you can go to Nickel, you can go to another disability group. You can seed the ideas. They will pick one of those ideas and take it to the next level. But the trick is to find people who already have feelings about what's wrong, what needs to happen, and give them permission to express that, to take matters into their own hands, and to do it.
If you could pinpoint one or two things in your life that gave you the aha experience that you could channel this anger and do some really exciting things with your own anger that would make a difference, what would they be?
I mean, the experience of going to ADAPT and watching those individuals who aren't working for independent living centers, who don't have payrolls, coming in, don't have those kind of supports, and living on SSI, having nothing to lose, watching them do things, fight for things, that is of such inspiration to me. They have nothing to lose, and they help me to understand that when I play the game, I can't act like I have something to lose. I can't worry about my comfort, my job, my power. Because if I do, I will lead them astray. I will give them bad advice. I have to figure where they're at. And they have nothing to lose. And their sense of I have nothing to lose was a big lesson to me, that I cannot, as someone who does get a paycheck, act like I have something to lose, because I will harm them, I will misguide them.
What are the key principles in values to a good community organizer?
Inclusion, that's the biggest one. I think the key value is that we need to bring people in. We need to allow debate. We have to allow dissension. I find an awful lot of pressure is put on people not to dissent, even among the radicals, even among the most argumentative people. They don't want to be around people who want to argue with them, who don't want to agree with them. And I find the principle of including people who don't agree with you is one of the best ways of being the most prepared for whatever battle you're doing, whatever contingency you're planning for. Because your dissenters in the group, your radicals within the radicals, will give you important information about where you're weak, about where your blind spots are, so to speak, where you're not bringing in information, and it helps you to prepare. And so inclusion, including having people who don't agree with you in your environment, in your group, And the teamwork and the dialogue and the debate that comes with that is one of the big principles. One other principle is get to the front of the parade. Don't decide this is where I'm going and everybody better follow me. You figure out where people want to go, and when you know from them where they want to go, then you know where to lead them. But don't do their thinking for them, and don't tell them what they need to do. Give them choices. Let them figure out where they feel the strongest, where they feel they're going to do the most good, and then give them the support, either by your presence, by your example, and by your encouragement, and lead by allowing them to direct the parade. You're just jumping in front of the parade. The parade's going to go. It just needed a majorette.
You mentioned that you learn most from your mistakes. Talk a little bit about the organizing things you've learned from some of your mistakes.
Well, I've learned that you can't be a social worker. You can't take care of people. Even in the organizing, you've got to be insistent on a great deal of self-reliance and responsibility in the organizing. But that doesn't mean you're insensitive and you can't share. It doesn't mean that. It does mean that we're building community. We are interdependent, so to speak, and each one helps, and each one teaches, and each one shares. So I think that's what I've learned.
Give an example.
I've been places where people who are radical do turn on each other, and I've seen that, and I think that's a real bad thing. Where in the midst of a group, you'll begin to have problems within the group. We have to keep our folks, so to speak, thinking of the big picture and not splintering, and realizing that just because someone isn't fighting for and the same way you're fighting doesn't mean that person's your enemy. And now we need a new subgroup. We need to I've seen example after example where people who have strong opinions turn on other people who have strong opinions, and that I think that's one of the greatest mistakes we make as a community organizer, is to not feel that we can stop it at a certain point and come back together, but just allowing it to run out of control. I've seen that. I've experienced it, where someone is extremely intolerant of my differing opinion than theirs, or my differing way of doing something, and that intolerance tends to splinter the group big time. And so we stay together. We teach interdependence. We expect diversity even within the organizing group, and we appreciate it. We don't drive it out.
Over the years, Kathleen, who have been your mentors and the people that you've learned from?
There are two people that have been the most significant to me. The first one was Judy Baracella, who was my first director back in the early 80s. She understood the principles of independent living and exposed me to them for the very first time. They seemed so real to me and so much in keeping of what I knew intuitively from my life experience, and I embraced it wholeheartedly. There was a point in time where I outgrew her. That relationship ended. When I was at Triple, Tri-County Patriots for Independent Living in Washington, struggling as a new director for approximately 3 years, I had a sense that I was missing a whole lot of the answers. I was like floundering. And one of the strong interests I had was computers and the internet. And lo and behold, I became the chair of the DimeNet committee, it was the Internet committee at that time, which evolved into a DimeNet thing later on. And I met what I felt was a very wise man who had a lot of experiences, and that was Roland Sykes. And he has been my mentor since the beginning part of that DimeNet, or that Internet, and learning the application of computers to the independent living centers, and working on that digital divide, which he understood was going to happen, and did happen. But more than just computers, Roland knows a whole lot about philosophy, the application of philosophy, and how we fail our own movement, the mistakes to watch out for, and the cruelty we have toward each other. And he sees that, and he was able to show me and give me visions of what we could be and what we should be if we stuck to the basics, stuck to the principles.
Kathleen, you've been a leader in bringing people up to the 21st century in terms of cyber organizing and the internet. Can you talk about some of that, what you learned, what are some of the good tools that you use?
I found that most people in this contemporary age, even if they can't read, have a natural curiosity about computers. I've learned that if you give people that opportunity, they'll explore it. You need to give them support. You need to give them opportunity, and I think that peer relationship works real well. So you foster that curiosity and take it as far as it'll go, and then you can use the tools that they learn to use to touch people in a moment's notice with information that they need, such as where we're going, what we're doing, what the problems are, and it's a good way to find out who cares about what you care about. And so that as an organizing tool was very, very helpful, and we saw that right away as being one of the keys to getting people who couldn't get out to where you were. If you can get them a computer, or else if they got one somehow, you had a communication tool with them to find them and them find you, and get to them fast. And I encourage that. I encourage all kinds of uses of computers, including the one for organizing. But I do find that it's a tool that you have. It's not everything. And I know that there's a lot of people who say, well, if we get too accustomed to using the computer tools, we're going to forget to talk to each other. We're going to forget to make the phone calls to people. We're going to forget the human element. And I agree with those. I agree with exactly those fears. But I think we could use both well, both the personal and the computers, to do the organizing, to get a strong coalition built on people who have had similar experiences and share the anger on similar subjects.
Can you talk about a specific example of using these tools, something you're really proud of?
Well, I remember ADAPT was very hesitant about using computers, and I was with ADAPT on many occasions. They knew that whenever there was a chance to say the word computer, they can depend on me to say the word computer. I began to be very irksome to them. I tried to assure them that I would make it as easy and as painless for them as absolutely possible, that our center would do all the work. All they had to do was send me a little piece of email, and we would get it to the world, but only to whoever they wanted. And not only that there would be security, there would be confidentiality. And together I was able to encourage them. Now I do remember one moment where one of the leadership said to me, Kathleen, you have to understand, most of our people are not on the internet. and don't have access. And I said to that person, I do understand that, but do you want to be in front of them or do you want to be behind them in that access? Because check back in 1 year and you'll find a tremendous change in the number. And I think that was the turning point for some of the folks in ADAPT to take that one last step and say, okay, I'm going to try it. And there were security issues. There were pieces of mail that were secret that got forwarded to somebody who shouldn't have seen it. Those kind of things did happen. I think we all learned a lot on how to guard against that. I'm not saying it never ever happens, but we learned a lot, how to take a little more precaution. I think the internet is one of the best organizing tools ADAPT has right now. We have continued to make it real easy on them. We do their web pages for them. We host their listserv. We help clean up problems that show up and provide those technical assistances to them, because they're overwhelmed and they need to keep focused on the organizing they do. They can't worry about whether or not the computer's working. They just got to worry about getting the message out. And we at the DimeNet, we at Triple, take that on as our responsibility and our contribution to the organizing that ADAPT does.
In the number of community organizing actions and issues that you've been involved with, Kathleen, which is the one that brings you the greatest strength?
The issues. Which one brings me the greatest strength? I think maybe, what we're doing right now with RSA, Rehabilitation Services Administration, who is responsible for the application of the law of Title VII of the Rehab Act, which in of itself is an application of a philosophy, and insisting on adherence to the philosophy and not just, detail, not just past practice, but application of the principles of inclusion, of participation, of self-determination, self-direction, cross-disability, access to information, access to services, and all those access issues, and really getting all of us to focus on what we're doing is an application of a philosophy. Is, I think, right now, what I'm doing, and right now, probably the most important work I've done.
And what work is that? What actually is your piece of this?
Right now, I'm working with National Council on Independent Living and with some of the states, Indiana and Pennsylvania in particular, who've had major problems with the application of the philosophy in partnership with their state government, and asking RSA to take us back to the philosophy in the decision making, in the application of the principles, and to strictly adhere to them and strictly respect them and not dismiss them as fluff. The philosophy is critical, and if RSA, who is really the policeman of what we're doing in independent living in terms of use of the money, in terms of cooperation with rehabilitation agencies, if they don't enforce the philosophy when it applies to what we're doing in partnership with those states, then we don't have anything that works, and it won't stand for long. I think what we're doing right now with them to go back to that philosophy is one of the most important things I've ever been involved in.
Can you talk about your involvement in actions and when they've had to move on the continuum from marches, demonstrations, to confrontation, to civil disobedience?
ADAPT needs to move mountains. We need to leave what we're doing, which is in our local communities, which moves things in a minuscule, small basis, moving minds that are local, meeting minds who are at the state level, come together and move a mountain at the federal level. We have to use the best strategy. We have to use the power of the people, the voices of the people. We have to get them to the people who need to hear the message. ADAPT really does have a life of its own once you get the people to where they need to be, whether it be halls of Congress, whether it be in front of the White House. The people know what they want. It's ADAPT's job to deliver the people to where they can deliver the message. Whether they're taking down the streets and blocking traffic and putting the city in gridlock, or whether they're shutting down the elevators at HUD, a lot of that stuff really happens because the people have such strong wills, and they have an opportunity to make an impression, to get government to understand it's not business as usual today. It's something different. You have to pay attention to our message because people are dying, people are suffering, and someone has to bring that picture to you. Much of what ADAPT does is point 600 people in the right direction. And these 600 people know what exactly to do next, which is give it their all. And I've been there when they've been arrested. I've been there when they haven't been arrested, when they should have been arrested. But nobody is giving them cues of what to do every minute. That is not happening. People are following their conscience. People have been learning from previous actions that what we need to do is get people to pay attention, whether it be the media, whether it be the target, so to speak, the highest person in the highest seat of whatever bureaucracy we're approaching, whether it be a intransient congressman whose vote we desperately need because he holds some key point in the committee. We believe that the truth of our message, if we get it to them, will be understood. After they get over the anger, after they get over, the inconvenience of the day, they will look at the message. What brought those 600 people to my door? What made them shut down my office? Now that all the hubbub's over, let me look at what they were talking about. And the truth of the message will speak for itself. When we go away, the benefits of what we did will continue and continue and continue. And we have learned that that is exactly what happens. With every action that we do, we have converts. And we have people in the system who are now carrying our message.
Kathleen,
Yes.
how do you maintain keeping people actively involved for the various actions that ADAPT gets into?
They need to feel that they're getting something out of it in order to continue their involvement. They aren't there just in service. They need to feel they're personally making progress, making connections, making a difference in what's happening. Their ideas are respected. That's really how you keep people involved, is keep them respected, keep them contributing, keep them having their personal needs for satisfaction being met. And if you can do that through encouragement, discipline, but encouragement, then you can keep them involved.
You've been doing this for a lot of years. How do you deal with burnout? And how do you deal with replenishing and rejuvenating and renewing your energy? And how do you help other people do that?
Well, I'm personally a person who doesn't really like to do the same job twice. After I've done something and figured out how to do it, whether it be how to stop an elevator or how to get a crowd to through the elevators in the subway, I don't really want to be responsible for the same job twice. That's personally a problem for me, and I will find somebody else to do it. So as quickly as I learn how to do something, I find somebody else to take over that task so I can move on to something else I haven't learned yet, something else I haven't figured out yet, and looking for a new challenge. Personally, that's how I do it for myself. I know I was very, very involved with the first organization of the first conference for Nickel and for the Pennsylvania Council on Independent Living. I was key to those two events in a major way. And as soon as those events were over for the first time, I stepped back because I really wanted somebody else to do it, because I was off to doing something else, learning something else. And so that's how I keep myself. I'm pretty impatient. I learn at a fast rate, and I want to move on. So I'm always looking for what I don't know how to do and what somebody else needs to have done.
So how about other people? How do you help them with this?
Okay, other people aren't necessarily as impatient as me, and I frequently can find someone who does something and is good at it, is willing to stick at that for a while. But you do have to watch for burnout, and usually it means I'm getting bored. That's usually what burnout really is. I'm getting bored. I'm feeling trapped. I don't have anywhere to go from here. And if you get them to turn over what they've been doing to somebody else and move on to a new challenge, you could keep them usually. So keeping it fresh.
How do you approach strategic planning?
Strategic planning, you've got to collect a lot of information before you start out. You have to know who the players are. You have to know the lay of the land. If you're talking about planning and action, you need to know physically what you're seeing you're coming up on. You need to know what arguments or what discussion is going to be most pertinent. Exactly what you don't want to have is take everybody to their federal legislator and have them talk about state legislative issues. You've got to do all that kind of preparation so that does not happen, where you take people and they miss the mark and you take them to HUD and they're talking about transportation. You don't want that to ever happen. So you've got to do enough strategic planning to know that you're taking people with you who know the issues, who are going to be able to articulate those, who are going to be able to help you with the planning because they know the issues so well. There's a basic formula which requires a certain processing of information where you're organizing, everybody's sharing, everybody's talking. You crystal it down to the most basics. You lay it all out. You give your group choices. And then you gather the most information about some of those most important choices and what's possible. What will give us the biggest bang for the buck? What will give us the most logical step in the progress we want to see? What is the biggest pillar that we have to start taking a blast out of and maybe come back again to hit again later? But it's real key that we do a little bit of that work now. So you've got to look at it from a very short range and a very long range process. You have to consider in strategic planning, the basic logistics of communication. How are you going to talk to each other, such as radios or the use of runners, and how are you going to feed the group? How are you going to take care of personal issues, such as bathrooms, such as carrying things, such as broken down wheelchairs? What kind of contingencies do you have for those types of events? Even if all you have is a credit card, at least you have a contingency. So the strategic planning is really, the best strategic planning comes when you have experienced people who's been to a lot of different problems, a lot of different traps, and made a lot of different mistakes, and having those kind of individuals in on the planning is real key to whether or not this plan is going to be a success.
There's nothing more frustrating in this city, Washington, D.C., than getting on a metro elevator when there are about 100 other people who are using chairs behind you and in front of you. How do you make that work? You mentioned that before, managing the elevator issue. How do you do that so it doesn't take hours?
First of all, you prepare people for the fact that it is going to take hours. You tell everybody, this is going to take hours. You know, there's no reason to get upset about it when it takes hours. But with a little bit of cooperation and a little bit of efficiency, we can do this as efficiently as we can. And it is key to stick together and to look out for each other. And just because you aren't the next, you know, you're not going to be on that elevator for the next 40 minutes because you're so far down the line, you know, don't show your anger and irritation over that. Use that kind of time to talk to your neighbor, to talk up the issue, to relax. Make sure you have what you need in the way of water and candy. If you decide to spin off from the group and come back, do understand we're not waiting for you. You are on your own. We don't want anything to happen to you. So don't do that unless you know exactly how to get back. And so you prepare the group before you ever go toward that elevator. And then if you have a few people who are real good at cueing others, you put them right up by the elevator. You put somebody running the doors, and you do the best you can to make things efficient, because that gives people encouragement. If they see an elevator repeatedly going up with one person in there when two people could fit, there's something wrong, and there should be enough experienced people in the group that if they see that kind of thing happening, to jump in there, intervene, start giving orders, start executing discipline, so that inefficient behavior ceases. Everybody appreciates it, and so that kind of stuff happens a lot.
In your experience, if you've been involved with coalition building on a particular issue, how did you go about doing that?
Coalition. Building coalitions, I think, is one of the most important work we're doing, and I believe the best way to do it is become interested in another group and going and listening to that group, becoming part of the environment in that group, sharing your ideas, having your ideas emerge by being part of the group. And I believe that's the best way to have people start to listen and start to share. I think one of the things I'm most proud of was going to adapt. I was one of the first people in Nickel to go over and sit there and be a real student and go over with a great deal of humility. I don't know anything. I really don't know anything. First time I walked up to Mike Auberger, I said, "Hello, my name is Kathleen Kleinmann. I'm from Nickel." And he says, "I don't care who the hell you are. Get the hell out of my way." And I got out of his way, and I realized I must have said something wrong, or the timing's way off. But I'm not going away. I'm just going to wait for another time. And so I didn't go away. I went and sat with the troops. And 2 days later, I was hauled off to jail for my first arrest. And Mike Auberger was in the same truck with me. And he started asking me questions. "Well, what do you think? How's it going?" I was blown away that I was even being asked these questions after what had been going on, because I knew no one in ADAPT. I didn't know everybody was an absolute stranger to me, but I wanted to know what they knew. I wanted to see what they saw. I wanted to experience what they experienced, and so whatever it took, I was going to do that. And I guess at the end of that week, which is usually a 5-day week for ADAPT, I had been noticed in terms of not talking, not trying to jump in front, but paying attention and trying to learn, asking questions. I would go up to anybody and say, "Now, this is where we're going. What do you think is going to happen next?" And trying to be a part, whatever that is, trying to share. And I think I earned a little bit of credibility doing that. I think I earned a little bit of respect by not coming in saying, well, I'm from Nickel and I know everything already, and I'm just here because I'm a diplomat. I mean, not taking on that kind of attitude, I think, is exactly why I got a little further. That I came on saying, I want to learn something, because I'm totally ignorant about what you're doing. And I know what I have been doing to achieve change has been way too slow. I'm very embarrassed with how little I've accomplished in the way of change. As being a SIL director for so many years, working in the independent living field for so long, I'm very embarrassed with how much change I have not caused and created. I feel that if I'm taking a paycheck and I'm so educated and so experienced in independent living that I should be making much more of a contribution, and I didn't feel I was. So I really feel I have to help the group, help all of us, help myself take giant steps, and that's kind of what drew me into ADAPT, because I was able to readily see just by being with them that 1 week that we were moving mountains. We were taking giant steps, and all the meetings for 3 years with HUD or Department of Transportation wouldn't have done as much as 1 week with ADAPT. And that became very obvious very quickly with the results that ADAPT was getting in the way of letters and meetings and promises that we'd never seen before after working all during the 80s. And it was so incredibly slow in the 80s for me. In the 90s, we're making a lot more progress.
So what would the take-home message be that you would give other executive directors of independent living centers related to your evaluation on what you had accomplished and hadn't accomplished versus in the 80s versus the 90s?
I think the key for us as center directors is to give permission and to give support to all the different things that people want to do. To not be one of the folks in their environment who's saying, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that, I won't support that. And whether that be staff, whether that be board members, whether that be volunteers, whether that be community members, when someone comes in and says, I think this is the way it should go, I think this is what we should do, I think this is what we ought to do, link them up with other people, give them encouragement and support, see if that idea catches other people. If it catches other people, if other people rally around that idea, it's probably a good idea. But it's not up to me to nix it coming in the door. And that's the one thing I think I try to do at our center, is create a very, very permissive and supportive environment at all levels. And not to control everything, not even to try to control everything. I mean, we make sure the work gets done, make sure the reports are done, make sure the statistics are right in the report, make sure the budget's taken care of. That's my job. Beyond that, my job is to give permission and to find the resources that people need to do what they want to do.
How have you handled negotiations when it came down to sit at the table and talk? How have you approached that?
Everybody needs to play a role in that. Take somebody in with you who's really good at saying the right thing and smoothing feathers and making the people you're trying to talk to really comfortable. Take somebody else in who's very impatient, likely to pound the table, likely to stomp out the door, likely to break into tears. You got different rules to play in negotiations. All of these rules need to be brought out. People have to decide who's going to play these roles. Who's going to be the one who's really angry, the good cop, bad cop? Who's going to be the one who makes all the sense? Who's going to be the one who causes a scene and rushes out the door in a huff? You will know that just by who you're taking in. You don't even have to discuss it ahead of time. You will know. But you need to plan for those rules, because that's what makes the meeting move.
What's your typical role?
I switch.
Oh, you're switch hitter. Huh?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
I can't believe you
Yes,
break
I
into
do.
tears and run out of the room.
I've done that.
Oh, I can
Really?
see it.
Yes.
I've seen it.
If nobody else is willing to do it, I will.
You shatter me.
If nobody else is willing to do, and it's neat. I did that one time. At the White House, where all of a sudden, all the other ADAPT folks were making sense, and I said, I can't leave here with nobody throwing a fit. I guess it's my turn, and so I did. And I mean, but somebody had to do it because the meeting was getting very stale. The meeting was very to the paper, to the rules and regulations. There needed to be an injection of feeling. So I got on a soapbox and screamed that while we had been sitting here for the last 20 minutes, 5 people had died in nursing homes. And I couldn't stand this. And how could anybody in this room stand this? And it was a very effective way to close the meeting because everybody got real for a moment and everybody realized what they were working on was not academic. It was very urgent. And that can even happen when you have the ADAPT leadership with you on occasion. If nobody remembers that they have to play this role.
Do you think they were awed by the environment, by the milieu around them, the White House, the table, the people?
I don't know. I don't think their ADAPT is ever awed. I think they just were all a little too serious that day. I think they just got too serious and were thinking they were making progress, and someone forgot to go there. So I'm looking around saying nobody did this. I guess I got to do it. But you need that kind of energy. It's a great way to end a meeting. It's a great way. Somebody is so upset and so it gets talked about. That was an emotional meeting. It was a meaningful meeting. Do you remember what she said? That somebody's got to play those roles. You talk about strategy. You talk about role playing. Somebody's got to inject the emotion. And once in a while, it's my role. Once in a while, I'm the bureaucrat, all dressed up, all fixed up and pieces of paper and taking notes. I mean, I know how to play that role. I do know how to play that role. Doug, I know how to play that role. But sometimes it's real appropriate. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you need somebody else jumping up and down, screaming, hollering. And you got to respect that role. It's what makes the whole process work.
How do you approach legislators?
I like to take a group, and the group needs to have a feeling about what we're there to talk about. They have to have a personal experience that they can share. I would never go to talk to a legislator anymore alone because I know that would be a mistake. Legislators are seeing paid lobbyists, all the time. You got to remember that. What they don't get a chance to see all the time are real people. So I normally approach them with real people with my intention to play a minor role, get them to talk, and then just make important points that I think might get lost in the storytelling, get lost in the rhetoric if the points weren't made. So I usually sit back and listen for what's missing from the meeting and try to make a contribution based on a critical appraisal of what's going on right now in the discussion and what can we not walk out of here not having said, and make sure that those items get interjected at certain points. And I take it on as my responsibility to do that myself if I can't get somebody else to do it.
How about tips for working with the media?
The thing that mistake I've seen most often is to not have enough handouts, not to anticipate how much you got to have with you. You need large numbers, especially if you're out on the street, because you need to give them not just to the media, but you need to give them to the passerby. It makes even the media more interested if they see other people taking your flyer and walking away reading it and stopping to talk to you. If it's just made for the media, it's less interesting. And because they're a little jaded. They've been to a lot of publicity events, They need to see that it's a living, breathing thing, and the way to do that is to get the passerby to take an interest in what you're doing and having enough materials to give to them as well as to the media. That's the big key I've seen.
Getting the media out, how have you been able to accomplish that?
To get the media out to an event, you really need to have a relationship. You've had other events that have made good stories. That then you say, well, this time I got a real good story for you. You really like the one I did with you 3 months ago. Well, this one's even going to be better. Reporters normally come back for another story if the one they did with you the first time sold some papers, actually got aired on the TV, actually found their editor interested. So you give them stories that they like, and then you got them back for when you like, because you help them sell papers, you help them sell media.
But how do you know that? How do you know they liked it, or their editor was involved with it, or that you did a good job?
One of the big clues is where they put it in the paper. Was it in the first page or two, or was it way back in the back? If it was way back in the back, it didn't go over too well. If it was way up in the front and they actually included a picture, they liked that one. That was something for them. That's frequently. That previous relationship that you've had with media people normally really pays off, and therefore, it's not something you could say, oh, I'm just going to do this today. I've never done it before. I'll never do it again. If you look at it as a short-term thing, you're going to have a lot more misses and hits on that one. It has to be something that you've seeded somewhat and that you've had some success with, and then you can build on that success.
So what questions have we not asked you that we should have?
In 10 seconds or less.
Okay. I think our Center for Independent Living is a bit of a model, is unique in that, where each one of the people who work at the center is a volunteer coordinator, is bringing in people all the time, is finding things for people to do, and is a living, breathing place. It's a big place with lots of room, and it's a meeting place for the community.